So let's do an example of Java unit testing using jUnit. There'll be 3 files in this example. The first one will be the class under test, which contains a method under test. That method will take an integer input and output a string of a particular value. That will be tested using the unit test framework, jUnit, using the @test label. And I'll have a test method inside of unit test class that will do an assertion for equality using assert equals, looking at the reference value string and comparing it to the value of the string that's returned from the method under test. Finally, I've put in a little extra piece, which is the main class right here. Inside of the main method there, I'll have a try-catch block that will run the unit test using the object created from the method unit test class. And that try-catch will see whether or not the unit test succeeded or failed, and will print out a message if it succeeded and a message if it fails as well, which is a little bit more than what jUnit typically does. Okay, so let's start an IntelliJ project. So I'm going to say new project, unit testing version 3, like that. And inside of here, I'm going to create a little package. So new package c.yorq.eecs.eecs1021, which is the name of the course. And I'm going to have a main class, so my main class right here. And inside of my main class, I'm going to create a main method, like that. Inside of it, I'm going to create an object called the test. So it's going to be of type test class, which will be another class file that I'll create, like that. So I'm creating an object called the test of type test class. Now, clearly IntelliJ isn't happy about that. We'll deal with that in a second. From there, I'm going to create a try-catch block, which will take a look at the success of testing that happens in jUnit. And it's going to look for an assertion error, like that. And we're going to call that assertion error variable E. All right, so we have that set up right there. So now I want to create my test class. So I take a look at the red light bulb. It allows me to create that test class. I say I want to do it in this package. Yes, and so it creates this new file right here for me. Now I'm going to go back to main, and I'm going to create my object, or I'm going to call it from here, and then it'll be prompted to create that method within the test class. So I'm going to do this, the test. So we're going to call it the test right there. That's the object. And we're going to do a first test. Let's say we could have multiple tests if we wanted to. From there, I'm going to do a print statement. If this works, then I'm going to say test succeeded, like that. And then if it fails, I'm going to do another print statement that says test failed, period. And I'm going to say error message. I'm going to take the output of E, and I'm going to print it to the screen so that we can see what that error message was. Now, I go back up here, and I can see that first test is missing as a method. So I'm going to say create method inside of test class. All right, so now this gets filled in by IntelliJ, and I want to start filling that in. All right. Now at this stage, I need to bring in jUnit. So I'm going to go to File Structure, like this, Libraries, plus, like that, from Maven, jUnit like this. I'm going to do a search, and I will look for, I think it's 4.12 or 4.16 or something like that. There we go. Scroll, scroll, scroll. There's lots of these. Here we go. Well, let's take 4.13 like this. All right. Enter, enter, enter. Okay, okay, okay. And now I need to do an import. So import org.junit.star. And I'm going to do another one, org.junit.assert. I need my assertions here. Assertion or assert equals, like that. I believe that's it. Did I get that right? Org jUnit assert dot assert equals. I believe that's correct. It's red, but I think it's all right. Okay, next up. I have my method in here. I'm going to have an input value as an integer. I'm going to set up like that. And I'm going to make a string as my reference value. So this is going to be the true value, the one that's assumed to be true. I'm going to have that as worked, like this, and a string test output. So this is going to be the output that comes from the object that we're going to be testing. I'm going to set it to null because it will be modified by that test object. And let's see, from here I need to put the label test right there. So this right here, this method, is now labeled as a jUnit test. And you can see immediately that the triangle it appears and allows me to run it. We're not going to run it right now. And we're actually going to run it through the main class. But that's standard for jUnit testing. Now, I want to now create the class under test object. Okay, we're going to call it student object because it's the student that's writing it. So I'm going to say class under test, like that. Student object is equal to new class under test, like this. It doesn't exist yet. So now I have to create it. So click on that. Create class, class under test. Yes, please. All right, so now I have my class under test. So in here, let's create the method from scratch, just so you can see how it's done. Public, we're going to have an output string from this. This is going to be the method under test, like that. And we're going to take an input of input value like this, open print or open curly braces, and we're going to do an if else in here. If else, like that. So if input value, like that, is equal to 1, then I'm going to want an output string. So string output string like this is equal to null. I'll set it up as null first, and I'm going to say output string is equal to worked, like this, which I believe is the value I'm looking for right there. Yeah. Okay, so if it succeeds, if it gets a value of 1, I'll output the word worked. And then if not, output string is equal to, let's see, I'm going to say didn't work, like that. And then after the if else, I'm going to return that string. Output string like that. All right. So I think that's complete right there. All right. So now I go back to my to my test class right there. Okay. So I have an object called student object that is of type class under test. Fantastic. And now I want to run the method inside of it and get an output from it. So I'm going to have my test output as the string that comes out of student object, and I'm going to do the method under test, and I'm going to use the input value as the thing that I inject into it, and we're going to get a resulting output from it called test output. Now I want to check that the method under test returned a good value. And by good value, I mean the reference value. So here I do assert equals reference value and test output. All right. Oh, it looks like it didn't do the right import. Let's do this. Oh, I needed to import it in a static way. Okay, well, there we go. I have the proper import now. So assert equals is here. That's finished. I'm back in main class. All right, I believe I have all the pieces together. I have the class under test, which is the thing that I'm testing. I have the unit test set up here as the first test method. I'm going to call that from main class. If the test is successful, I should get a printed statement that says test succeeded, and if not, I get test failed, and it should tell me how it failed. So let's run this the typical way that we would run a program in Java from IntelliJ. So it says test failed, error message, expected worked, but didn't work. So why was that? Input value was 0, so I submitted a value of 0. Now, if I submitted a value of 1, now it should work. Oops, like that, 1. So we want it to get an input value of 1 in order to have success. So let's run that. Oh, I didn't run it right. Don't run it from here. I want to go back to main class and run it from here. There we go. Actually, I think it ran. Let me see if that ran properly the first time. No, it didn't run it. It has to be run from main class. Here we go. Test succeeded. Okay, so now let's make it fail again. Back into test class. So let's make a mistake in terms of the reference value. Run it again, and it failed. So it says test failed. So I have my own personal failure message right here. Test failed. And I could make it different than that if I wanted to. Error message. And it's bringing it from the comparison failure inside of the jUnit library. And here it says it's expecting worked, but it actually didn't work. So you can get both a standard message that comes out of jUnit, and you can also create your own variation or variant of a message that comes out based on the success or the failure of the test.